Hey, welcome back to TwoSun Tuesday, and today we have a knife that I was very excited about when I first saw, and picked it up, and there's a lot to like about it, and there's some issues, so let's go ahead and get into it. It's the TS375. This is the first, and so far only, crossbar lock that they've made. There we go, it's a NightMorning design here. It's in D2 steel with a nice stonewash finish on it. It's from NightMorning Design, and you can see we also have TwoSun and the NightMorning logo on there. Something that isn't absolutely unheard of. Like we have this old guy, the TS49, where this just has NightMorning. It doesn't have a little patch for it, but the front certainly does. So it's something that NightMorning has done on a few knives in the past. And we have some micarta inlays going on here. This is a highly polished micarta, and it's natural, and their newer, higher quality canvas stuff. It's not their micarta that they've used in the past, which is pretty good. You can maybe feel a little bit of gaps if you're literally dragging your fingernail between the transitions or something like that. But it's something you're looking for. It's not something that you actually feel at all when you got the knife in hand. Unfortunately, what you can feel is a little bit of up and down motion on the crossbar lock. This isn't unfortunately too uncommon with crossbar locks, especially with companies who jump in going, oh, I got this, and then haven't really quite figured out the exact nuances to get rid of that. So yeah, this thing does have a little bit of a up and down play. As we can look at the crossbar in there, it's not really moving at all. So this isn't dangerous. It's not something that, oh no, it's going to come unlocked on you because this is sliding back against the tang of the blade on the inside there. It's just that in the fully forward position, the blade platform at the top doesn't quite meet. The tolerances weren't quite there for it. It is kind of unfortunate, but it is also a very real reality for new makers of crossbar locks, especially those like TwoSun that don't really do a whole lot of prototyping or anything like that. To go, that didn't quite work out. How about if we tweak this or something like that? Maybe that's what they would consider an up model to be or something like that. But yeah, other than that, this thing feels solid, like a brick house solid. It feels wonderful. Until basically just the Kunwu X style, haven't really had a titanium based crossbar lock before. And out of the two of them, I do prefer this one over the X Tau. I don't know. I've had a review in the works where I'm trying not to be too savage, but I'm really disappointed in the knife. So there's kind of that thing there for you. However, the X Tau doesn't have that up and down play. It's not much, but it's enough to notice it if you're kind of pushing down on the jimping up top there. You'll be like, whoa, oh, all right. But the action is pretty darn good. Of course, like most of them, it's going to be much better if you fully pull that back rather than having part of the crossbar lock still kind of in contact with the back end of the blade there. Just as it is on pretty much all other access locks. I guess outside of this blade up and down play that kind of plagues it a little bit, we do have another stupid design decision with a single screw going into micarta for the pocket clip there. This is kind of a larger squared off sort of thing, and this micarta is a little bit stronger. But you can see it's starting to be able to move a little bit. So, maybe after some months of carrying it in a pocket or something like that, if you want to carry it exclusively or something like that, that problem will get worse. It's a problem. NightMorning has done it more than other designers, but of course they've also put out a heck of a lot more knives than most of the others for TwoSun. But yeah, that's something that not super happy about, and it's a little unfortunate. I'd be a little bit less upset if these scales were carbon fiber or G10. They can take that a little bit more, but still, in general, I would really, really appreciate to see TwoSun use more than a single pocket or a single screw for attaching their pocket clips when they really have the ability to do that. So yeah, there's definitely that. This blade is super thick too. It's 3.95 millimeters, so just under 4 millimeters. Which is about as thick as they get, except for one very specific knife that has a 5 millimeter blade stock thickness, but whatever. So this is about as thick as you'd really want a blade to be for a folding knife. Still, the geometry comes down to a decent thinness behind the edge there. It's still a bit robust. It's not going to be a crazy laser beam, but this is definitely much more in that Benchmade freak kind of size, and kind of expecting just a lot of hard use out of it because of the materials used with the titanium and all of that. And this one in particular, at the moment, I do have some skiff bearings in there, something that I replaced after the fact, seeing if maybe it would improve the action or something like that on this guy, because you're not dealing with the ceramic detent ball riding along it. And it works out all right, but nowhere near necessary for anybody who was actually looking to pick this thing up. You can be fully actuated with just your thumb. I have to say that because a concept recently came out with a crossbar lock that you cannot actuate with one side. You must use both sides in order for the crossbar lock to move. Super annoying because I have, 20 some odd years of having that muscle memory of using the thumb. Apparently not so much on that Griptilian, which is kind of new to me, but yeah, the 940, all that sort of stuff. So it's done decently well, but still has those kind of problems there, where the tolerances on the flat of the blade don't quite meet up with the crossbar, so it does have just a touch of up and down motion, and the pocket clip is mounted with single screw into micarta, which means that you're going to slowly ruin that micarta over time. We have an integrated lanyard hole sort of thing on the back there. That's kind of my favorite way for folks to do that, so it's out of the way, but it still exists, and it doesn't look like you just drilled a hole through the knife. As an afterthought there. And like most crossbar lock knives, we have a decent choil sort of thing built in. It does have a gradual grind out to it, but it still ends before the knife, and the knife edge is pushed forward a bit. So that really doesn't bother me all that much. Thumb studs work great. They are titanium in case you wanted to anodize them a different color. They do stick out a bit. These are kind of the wide ones from some Wong knives. And as we can see, they do stick out on either side, like Alfred E. Newman's ears from the magazine Mad Magazine, if you're old enough to remember those sort of things there. And no call out pivot collar or pivot collar at all. Wasn't really necessary there. We do have a lot of nice micro milling going on the titanium, so that's all good. And yeah, just taking a look on the inside here, we do have some small steel inserts there on either side. So it is built much, much more like you would see from like the Benchmade 940, which actually extends much further down, so that's not really what I'm talking about. Something like the Benchmade bug out, where this is the absolute bottom of the liners there. on the inside that are all part of that locking mechanism. And a lot of other companies will do that too when they don't want to do a full linered version. Like a lot of the Griptilians, I guess, also do that. But of course, it also has titanium to back that up. So absolutely rock solid. It's a nice knife overall, but it still has those flaws that still felt like it's super necessary for me to go through. So, all right, we talked about the thick blade on this guy. Let's talk about the rest of it. 5.13 ounces. So it's over a 5-ounce knife. It's not a little tiny boy. It's 145.5 grams. So a Narrows Benchmade, it is not. It's not even a little bit. 3.32-inch blade. That's, of course, from that little kind of notch area on the scale out to the tip. It actually feels a bit larger than that, but that's basically the measurements that I got for it. And that's 84.4 millimeters. And then for the handle thickness, we got 0.56, so a little over half an inch thick. And of course, it is contoured on both sides, so that's only thickness in the middle there. That's 14.2 millimeters on it. And the pocket clip itself ends up working out great. It's got a nice ramp to it. It's decently wide. It comes in and out of the pocket really, really easily, so that's good. And the blade is definitely buried in there, so no snaggletooth. No problems worrying about any kind of danger when the knife is closed completely. However, kind of like the 312 from NightMorning, the tip is maybe just a little tiny bit exposed. I can kind of loop my fingernail around it, but I've never really felt like that's any kind of danger whatsoever. But still, it might have behooved him maybe just a little bit to take the tip back just ever so slightly and move that back spacer all the way down to that kind of apex point of the scales or something like that. But I don't know. It is what it is. So, all right, let's go ahead and do some blade size comparisons. Since I'd already pulled out some knives before, it's very similar to that Griptilian. And yep, and the 940. They both basically have kind of the same handle and blade ratios going on, but of course the Griptilian's much taller. There's another crossbar lock for you. There's the Benchmade bug out. And then here's the Spartico PM2, which similar as far as blade length goes, but of course the PM2 also has longer handles than a lot of other knives. That's definitely to accommodate that large lanyard tube on them. There's PM3, which, yeah, it's going to be smaller. All right, let's pull out a couple of others, such as the Rat number 1, which is definitely going to be a little bit larger. And then, of course, the Civivi Elementum, which is definitely smaller. So, all right, there's basically everything that I wanted to cover about this thing. It's got a couple of negatives, but it's still an interesting knife. I do hope that if they do revisit making a crossbar lock, that they do work just a little bit on it, on the tolerances for it actually meeting the back flat part of the tang that's kind of necessary for these kinds of locks. Because once they got that, and maybe, I don't know, maybe make something a little bit more akin to a bug out or something like that. A little bit thinner, not a 4mm blade stock thickness and stuff like that. Might be a super, super popular knife. Like a 129 that's probably TwoSun's most well-known knife thus far. But, yeah, time will tell on that. We haven't seen another crossbar lock since this one here, so not sure if they're interested in continuing to pursue it. But alrighty, I do want to kind of take this guy apart a little bit, kind of show y'all on the inside of it. Something that, in general, I do not recommend someone actually disassemble fully a crossbar lock knife unless you really know what you're doing, because these things are kind of a pain in the butt to get back together. But yeah, we'll go ahead and play around with it a little bit. So there we go. We got the offset sort of stuff going on there with the handle scales. Of course, this has a Chicago screw on the backside, but that doesn't really do a huge amount to fully disassemble the knife, but it is kind of important. All right, there's other much shorter Chicago screw that doesn't have to do with the pocket clip. All right, and I can unscrew the pivot here, and then, of course, unfortunately, we do have a T6 screw for the inside of the scales there, and that is actually necessary to remove. And at this point, there we go. Yeah, it'll pop right off. And we can see what we have going on here. This is the inside liner. We have a stop pin at the top here. We got the Omega springs, one on each side, that kind of loop around the crossbar that will move backwards and forwards. And that is screwed through the micarta and titanium there. And, oh man, I keep thinking whether or not I actually want to do it. Alrighty, let's go ahead and do it. I will need, of course, for being on the cautious side, a pair of tweezers. I don't know, these are for my fix-it, but, you know, anything decent. So you want to grab that and release that from that little notch area there. That way this thing won't just go out into the netherworld, never to be seen again. Then, yeah, I will move that just a little tiny bit. Oh man, I don't want to do this. I've done it once already because I put skiff bearings in here, but yeah, it is a little worrisome of a process. But, alright, let's do it. You know, sometimes there are a little bit better ways of dealing with crossbar locks where you don't have to fully pull out the pivots, which does cause a whole bunch of problems. But, alright, here we are. There's the skiff bearing on the inside with the bronze housing and all that sort of stuff. The other one's in there. Yeah, that's basically it. I don't really think that it's necessary to go through all that, but yep, you can, of course, take that screw out on the other side there, and at that point you can remove this whole liner setup in case you really need to get into some things. But, alright, well, let's go ahead and try and slap this thing back together. And hopefully a decent way. This, of course, does need to spread out, so I can, of course, get these bearings in there. So I will do that first. Then, if I can, shove the pivot on here. This one also has a D-shaped pivot that's facing over this side here. So that's shoved up as much as it can be, which is definitely way too much, because then you can't get the blade in there. But it's a nice start. So at that point, I can push this down a little bit. I push it out all the way because that's just the kind of guy I am, apparently. So there we go. Then I can shove the blade in there and then cry. They do make tools that you can kind of shove through here before the pivot to make that a little bit easier. And I have kind of played around with a little bit of them, but not all of them kind of work out the same way. So in general, I just kind of leave it alone and just go with it au natural. And a lot of times, pulling back on the axis or crossbar lock really, really helps everything actually seat together properly where it's supposed to be. So if you're trying to get this pivot through and it looks like the either the bushings or the bearings, depending on the knife you have, just isn't seating, go ahead and pull back on the axis lock there, and it does help things actually seat correctly. But there we go, there's that. And at this point, not too bad trying to get everything back together. Do necessarily need to put the Chicago screws back through, mostly so that I can actually have the back spacer in place, because it does bad, ugly things if you don't have that in there and you shove the thing closed. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You can see there is just a little bit of contact with the spring on the inside there. This did come with some different lubrication. I've of course changed that out for in this particular case I've used KPL Heavy for it, so it's actually sticking around where it needs to be. But yeah, there we go. And go ahead and grab that one T6 screw that needs to go through everything. And of course it's going to be kind of pushed out of place there. In my particular case, there we go. I can use those tweezers to shove it up into where it needs to be. As long as you can actually make that thread correctly, then you should be good to go. Yep, you can definitely see why you might not exactly want to play around with disassembling crossbar locks. Oh, come on. You moved into place, and then you didn't. Well, I will put the pivot in just to make some of that a little bit easier. Not tighten down all the way, and that allowed that to move in there, so very gingerly, so you don't push that out of the way. Start to screw it in. Great, it bit. So fantastic. And of course we can put the other ones back in. Start with that guy. And from here I can shove that pocket clip down, and it will probably cinch down a little bit more. That's my T6, not my T8 screwdriver, so that's my bad. Alrighty, there we go with that. And then from there, if you have problems with it being a little bit wobbly, you can adjust it from there. But yeah, Not exactly the easiest process, but I do kind of like doing that on some newer crossbar lock knives, especially stuff from like Benchmade or Hogue or something like that. So I can actually polish the phosphor bronze washers because they don't really use bearings in many of their knives. And it's not a necessary step, but it does help with some of the break-in period where you'll get rid of essentially when they're slicing through the long bar that they're making the washers out of. One side is nice and polished, but the cut side tends to have a little bit of a burr left on it. So I end up just kind of rubbing that on some on my strap with some strapping compound on there. It's much softer material than steel, so it doesn't take very much. But yeah, taking that burr off of there does help with dealing with that. But this one had bearings on it to begin with, so definitely not necessary. But you know, in case you need to replace some Omega springs if they do fail on you. I haven't had any Omega springs fail on me. These are still technically the same Omega springs from this guy that I got in 2001. Either 2001 or 2002. It was a year after it was introduced. And haven't had any problems with any Omega springs on knives that I've had. Between this one, I've had a mini Griptilian in the past, a 921, which I really, really miss. It was another Osborne crossbar lock, but Warncliffe had a blue aluminum handle instead, and then a little slip joint that came out of the back that was also a little Warncliffe. It was 440C steel on the back part though, but still really, really neat knife. I gave it away to a female friend of mine a long time ago, as she kind of wanted something for a little bit of protection. And after kind of rejecting my suggestions that she probably just get one of those cold steel punch dagger sort of things that she can carry on her key ring or something like that. And then I handed that over to her. And I've missed it dearly, but hopefully she still appreciates it. I don't know. I don't talk to her anymore. But that's beside the point. Alrighty. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching. And have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo. And subscribe.